Hey everyone, Vince Ingenito here, and we are doing the Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain Spoilercast. We're gonna give away everything, so if you don't want to have Metal Gear Solid 5 spoiled for you, I don't really know why you clicked on this, but we're about to just ruin it all for you and talk about it. I'm here joined by my buddies, Chris, Jared, and Ben. And guys, we're gonna spoil the hell out of Metal Gear right now.
Yeah, we are.
Metal Gear. So all right, so let's start. I think one of the things that a lot of fans are interested in and care about is how this game exists like right smack dab in the middle, pretty much, of the timeline of Metal Gear.
Yeah.
And it marries like kind of the retro era Metal Gear with the more modern ones. So let's talk a little bit about some of the cool connections that get made from this game to the other ones. So, for instance, we've got the Man on Fire.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. So
Which is, of course,
Vulcan.
It's Vulcan.
Yeah,
I get to say it. It feels so good.
Yeah, but of course, before this thing, Ben was sitting here like, I finally get to talk about it.
There's no one else to talk to about these things. Also, that's not a secret. We all knew it.
It was pretty obvious, from just visually. It wasn't something that was hard to catch on.
You were kind of
to.
hoping for a red herring there, I think.
Right.
Like, okay, well, we were supposed to think it's Vulcan, but really it's but no, it's totally Vulcan.
There was a point in time where I kind of thought it might not be. When they were like, oh man, heaven or hell, where are we gonna go, boss? And they showed in one of the trailers him being good, and then him like walking down the stairs. I'm like, you turn into that dude if you're bad or something?
Right. So I started to think that maybe it wasn't, but then you hear Kaz before the mission starts, and he's like, it might be our old pal Vulcan.
Yeah, and you're like,
and then, so speaking of characters who you think and hope are going to be a red herring, but actually end up being exactly what you think they're going to be, is kind of the Man on Fire's counterpart, who actually, it's funny, doesn't really get formally a name in this game. Like most people will refer to him as just Floating Boy, also known as the Third Boy, if you listen to some of the tapes.
The third child.
He kind of looks like Carrot Top Psycho Mantis.
Right, and that's because he
a bit of a nail
actually
on the head.
is Psycho Mantis, which is a funny thing because, okay, so the first thing, again, not so much of a surprise. Like every time, when we first saw this character, we were like, that looks an awful lot like a young Psycho Mantis. Like, and I think the timeline works out. And it totally does, except that, at least in the time that I played, like, Ben, you and I were talking about this a little bit.
Yeah.
I noticed it was Psycho Mantis. Well, A, because it's obvious because of his powers and his and the mask.
Gas mask and all that.
And then the timeline, like one of the tapes places him in the Soviet Union at the right appropriate time for it to be, for the timeline to add up. But I don't remember an actual like moment where it's like, it's Psycho. The way they did with Vulcan. With Vulcan, they had that.
So
that
you have
moment.
that tape, like you mentioned, and then as we were walking in here, I had a revelation. I think during one of the missions, actually, they start talking about him while you're walking to your objective, and they talk about just like, oh, he did this. This is when he started to become psychoactive. I guess I'm not a brain words person, but they basically talk about how he would start to read people's minds, and he had to wear this gas mask to keep the thoughts out of his head. And you're like, those are all things that I remember Psycho Mantis definitely having be like character traits.
Yeah, it's a guy in a gas mask with psychic powers that flies around and is wearing a straitjacket.
It's like, well, that's
the straitjacket.
Why the straitjacket, by the way? Why doesn't he want to use his hands?
So he can light the sleeves on fire.
Well,
yeah, be really
this is a guy that has the ability to like create fire people and teleport.
Well, let's be clear, he can't create fire people.
He can only manipulate fire people.
More specifically, and this is like the weird thing about the way his powers work in this particular game, is that basically other people with strong wills or strong emotional, like intense emotional like fields basically can kind of co-opt him and use him as a sounding board through which their power can become manifest. So in the case of Vulcan, it's really weird. Like Vulcan is actually, for all intents and purposes, Vulcan is a corpse.
He's dead.
He's dead, but like his
super dead.
But his like lingering like anger and thirst for revenge against who he thinks is Big Boss, against who he thinks is Naked Snake.
His nemesis.
Right, his nemesis. Right, exactly. Is what fuels him. So that's kind of an odd thing about him. But we got a lot more connections to make, though.
Oh yeah.
Let's keep this moving forward. So then we've got Eli.
Yes.
Okay. Who Eli is. It's interesting. They do like the Kojima triple cross with this.
They do.
Yeah, they do. Because at first, when I saw Eli, I thought, okay. First, I'm like, why are you called White Mamba? Then when I got past, wow, this is dumb and borderline disturbing. I was like, okay, we're in Africa. Raiden's Liberian. This is Angola. You know, he likes bladed weapons. He's quick. He's blonde. Maybe I'm looking at young Raiden here, but
Right.
you know, African geography is actually a lot more broad than my first limited thought. And of course, we get kind of another thing thrown at us.
Right, actually, it's funny because that makes it a quadruple cross.
Yeah.
I had to think about that because I remember you and I had that conversation where you thought it might have been Raiden.
Yeah.
So then the next layer of it is that you hear Kaz and Ocelot talk about how one of the subjects of Les Enfants Terribles goes missing in Angola.
Yeah.
And then you go, it's
But it's got to be.
It's gotta be liquid.
Right.
it has to be. It just has to be liquid.
They did a lot
But
of
then
really, I was going to talk about how they even did a really good job of kind of teasing it in the trailer. I think he's called White Mamba because he actually has like a white mamba snake like tied onto his belt. But the fact that it was a young character who's the right age for those clones to be where they are, and then him actually look like Liquid, be in the same area as Liquid back when he was growing up.
But
And
then,
all that.
has
then
the
you have the
accent.
DNA. Then
Right,
you have
and
the DNA.
that's the
tape.
big
Yeah,
one.
that's the
So
problem.
you have this
So-
moment where Eli goes like he goes to jump into Sahelanthropus, which is this game's Metal Gear, and he's like, I don't need you anymore, Dad, and to Big Boss, and he jumps or Father or whatever he says, and he jumps in the cockpit, and you're like, there it is, we knew it, he was definitely Liquid, but then
Yeah, then we get the tape that's like, oh, we tested the DNA and you guys don't match up, so maybe it's not together. But then,
Again,
then we get to the big twist, which we'll get into more detail later. But basically, the key, the crux of it is that this character is not Big Boss.
Yeah.
And so that's why the DNA. That's why the DNA tape doesn't.
But is it
physically?
Big Boss?
Well, okay.
Yeah,
Philosophically,
that's-
we'll get into that later. Philosophically, yes, they are both Big Boss.
I think, I was going to say.
but not genetically.
We'll
though.
get to that argument in a second. We're pushing something down the road here. I really want to get to this because I feel pretty strongly about this one.
Okay, so yeah, well let's get into it a little bit. So the next one is Venom Snake.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Who is the protagonist of the game?
Some might call him punished.
or
No.
You're so happy you got to work that in, huh?
Well, it's just okay. Kojima's, again, he's an insane Muppet, and he's brilliant and wonderful. But like all the different names for this character, I love it. The fact that at this point, this guy, I really don't know if he's not like Primrose Everdeen Snake or something. At some point. It's just but okay. So we're gonna call him Venom for the purpose of this show. Okay.
Yeah. So Venom Snake.
Shouldn't it be Venomous?
oh, Mike.
Well, anyway.
Semantics.
Semantics. So Venom Snake, you are not. Okay, so you are kind of Big Boss, but you are not genetically. So you are not the person who Les Enfants Terribles is based off of.
Yes.
Right.
You
You're
are
not
you
the
are
Big
not
Boss.
you are not the Big Boss
You're not
whose
Jack,
whose
John,
DNA. Right. You're
whatever
not
it
any
is.
of that.
Not
You're
that guy.
you're not the genetic predecessor of Solid,
Liquid,
or
and Solidus.
There you
Right.
go.
Correct. Right.
So when you found this out, did you go back to the beginning, the prologue chapter, and replay it and listen to what is said?
Replay the stock one, not the one that you play at the end where you learn.
Right. Yeah.
You play the
No, I
beginning
haven't
at the
replayed that
end.
one.
Okay.
Why?
In the end and the beginning.
When you get to the character creator part, the
Yeah.
doctor said something like, "What do you remember yourself looking like?"
Right.
Yeah,
So I
that's
thought that
kinda
was-
rad. It's a
yeah.
neat little thing that's stuck in there.
I didn't
Yeah.
pick up on what the doctor said. I was more on the side of like, there's this guy who's picking up this gun, who's taking out these guys, who's really tactical. They're not showing me his face.
His voice sounds a lot
His
like
voice
Kiefer
sounds a
Sutherland.
lot like
Yeah.
Kiefer Sutherland right now. And he started dropping lines that only Big Boss says, like
On your feet, soldier.
Yeah.
that a lot of people know Ocelot as being the guy who says you're pretty good.
Yeah, you're pretty
but
good.
Not many people remember that Big Boss was the guy who said it to him.
Said him. Yep.
And
That's right.
it's where he picked it
Snake
up
Eater.
because Ocelot's like basically in love with him and he wants to emulate him a little bit. And
So you're some guy in the hospital. You're the guy that was in the explosion with Big Boss.
You were the medic. Yeah,
you're the medic.
You were the medic that was in the chopper in Ground Zero.
And so big twist, you create your face. Turns out that face you're creating is your real face, and you got changed to look like Big Boss.
Right.
And he's in the hospital right next to you.
Oh my God.
Okay, so which a lot of people actually guessed. Okay,
Right.
that one was a fairly popular theory before the game even
And
came out.
I don't want to
Right,
go
yeah.
too far down this rabbit hole. This is a whole theme of the game that I definitely want to talk about.
Yeah.
But the key thing we want to disseminate for people here is that there are two different Big Bosses, and as far as in terms of how they connect to the other games, okay, Venomous Snake. Venom. Damn it, you did it to me.
You did it to him!
Next up, it's not fail, people. It's failure. Epic failure. All right.
So Venom Snake
I love you.
is the now we have Venom Snake and we have Big Boss, and Venom Snake is basically Big Boss's Phantom. He's the
two Phantoms.
He's the person who to keep Cypher off of Big Boss's trail, so that people don't know that where the real Big Boss is. They basically create Venom Snake. So Venom Snake is now. What's interesting about him is that in a lot of ways, Venom Snake is really, as far as most people in North America are concerned, actually is Big Boss, because Venom Snake is who goes on to build Diamond Dogs into Outer Heaven.
Well, yeah, I'd like to go ahead and say, forget as far as people in North America are concerned. This guy is Big Boss. Yes, okay, if you're back in Ground Zeroes, no, this isn't the Big Boss that you knew. But if you're going to go ahead and think about, I met Metal Gear through Metal Gear on the NES. Big Boss is the bad guy.
Yeah.
And that's the dude, this dude that I'm playing right now, that's the Big Boss I knew first.
And that's the one you fight.
Right, the one I fight at the end of Metal Gear is the Big Boss. This is the Big Boss I met first. I'm playing him, and as far as I'm concerned, this is just as much Big Boss as the guy I'm running around with in Peace Walker.
Oh, sure.
Because you grow into the character. You become this person in this game.
Yep, we're gonna get into that for sure. But
yeah.
but Venom Snake, the person who establishes Outer Heaven, who then Solid Snake kills.
Right.
And meanwhile, in a Metal Gear game that was never released in North America, is we have Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake, and in that game, the real Big Boss, the genetic real Big Boss, is off building up Zanzibar land.
Okay.
So that's and then his story continues to snake out throughout the Metal Gear.
And he shows up again.
Snake out!
So yeah, that's how those guys work. And then we got a couple more to tie up real quick, and then we can move forward. So next is Paz.
Yeah.
And Paz is alive. Paz is actually alive and well.
I guess Jared hadn't found that yet until.
No, okay, I don't. No, let's move on from that.
Okay, all right. So yeah, Paz. Let's talk about Paz.
Yeah, so...
surprise, she's alive.
Yep, surprise, she's alive. If you go to the medical platform at a certain point later in the game, you will discover that she's alive.
You can do it right from the beginning. Like as soon as you get that medical platform built, and they never direct you there.
Oh, really? Can you get it right from the beginning?
Like as soon as it's built,
I thought at least it had to be chapter 2. I thought it had to be at least chapter 2.
There might be a chapter thing on it, but from what I've looked up and been told, it's as soon as the medical platform's built.
Cool. So yeah, Paz survived, and actually this is the perspective trick they play here is that Ground Zeroes, as we played it, is actually just how Venom Snake remembers the events of that incident. And since Venom Snake has tons of metal stuck in his brain,
He
he obviously doesn't remember everything exactly how maybe it happened.
Which is a clever way to do a retcon.
Yeah,
it works pretty well.
So here's the thing: is it really? That's the question: is it a retcon?
It's a retcon as far as we're concerned. But okay, that's a very existential question. As far as Snake's concerned, no. As far as we're concerned, yes. But again, that's a Metal Gear theme thing. Playing with reality, playing with the reliability of the narrator, playing with the control of information. These are all Metal Gear themes.
Right.
So is it a retcon? Yeah, no.
Right.
There you go. That's the way out.
And the thing is, now she has she has amnesia. She doesn't remember a whole lot. She remembers bits and pieces. But if you do this whole quest line of rescuing the stranded wandering soldiers from the original mother base that was destroyed in the Caribbean, you little by little she remembers certain things and she kind of imparts upon you different little pieces of missing history, which is kind of cool.
So I haven't gotten the last picture yet, and I'm wondering, those soldiers act very strange when you're out retrieving them.
Yes.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if that's something yet. I spent 90 hours in the game like that, and I still don't know some things. And we're still going to continue to discover things.
I've spent over 100, and the way they move makes me feel like there's some way related to the vocal cord parasites.
Yeah, there's something in there.
Okay.
Yeah, because the way they move, that kind of twitchy, really fast movement that they have. I mean, but then they talk normally and they throw grenades and stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe not. I think they were exposed in some way. I haven't found out everything. Every last little detail either. But then Paz's counterpart, Chico.
Yes.
Now if you would have asked me before the game came out, before I played it, who was I gonna see in this game, Chico or Paz? I mean, who would you have said?
Chico, definitely.
Right, for sure.
100%.
So so it's weird that you're just waiting for it, and then you just find out in a tape he's just dead.
Yeah, in a tape, I think it's Miller just goes, oh, it's a shame about Chico, you know. Like, well, you cast him aside in a tape like that, and that's it.
Yeah, it's a weird thing.
He's kind of a jerk in this game, though.
Yeah, he's
Kaz?
a
Oh yeah,
super
he's a
jerk.
super huge jerk.
And it leaves you the opportunity, again, we obviously this is supposed to be Kojima's final Metal Gear game, but you never know what might be coming.
Sure.
What Konami might have had planned for DLC, what might have been in the pipeline. Leaving something off camera always gives you an opportunity to revisit it in a different way.
That's true, and that wouldn't be the only thing in this game that they leave off camera. So, so moving on, we've talked about now the big kind of connections that get made to the other Metal Gear games. There's other ones for sure. There's, like I said, this has a lot of connective tissue. But let's talk about what people really get into and what people get really crazy about Metal Gear over, which is like the big WTF, huge, amazing moments. Yeah, the big megatons, which there's decidedly fewer of, I would say, in Metal Gear Solid 5 than in the other ones. But like, Chris, like what for you? Like, what was the biggest one you think?
I mean, definitely the Venom Snake Big Boss thing.
Okay.
Hands down,
Yeah.
100%. I mean, I know we already touched on it, but yeah, I mean, that's just blew my mind. And then realizing like what we talked about a minute ago, like with the character creator and going back, it's mind blowing.
Yeah,
it's like he told you this. Sorry to interrupt.
No, it's great.
It's like he told you the secret. It's like he told you the twist right at the beginning, and like it was right in front of your eyes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you didn't find out until God, how many hours into the game? You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, literally having Kiefer sitting next to you, and it's clearly Kiefer Sutherland talking to you, and they're like, yes, and Kiefer Sutherland is playing Big Boss in this game, and there's another guy talking to you with that, to the point that we had people saying things like, well, maybe it's a figment of your imagination.
Right, and that's certainly what I thought too at first, because this guy has a whole bunch of metal stuck in his head.
You can't trust him. Right?
I'm like, this guy could be, the character I'm controlling could be thinking or imagining anything. I'm like, I have no idea.
Whereupon it turned out Occam's razor cut, the simplest solution, which is that he's exactly what he seems to be, is the answer. And curiously, that didn't lead a lot of us to go, well, then who am I? Or at least it didn't to the point of complete resolution until it was spelled out for us, which was just a really neat thing about this game. Like Chris, that was definitely the thing that settled with me. And it's we've seen twists where like you're not what you seem, but unreliable narrator stories are really hard to pull off. This one I think is done better than most.
It's one of the best things about the story for sure.
Yeah, and it also explains why some of the earlier parts of the game maybe are a little less cutscene heavy. It gives you less time to speculate on yourself, on why you're so laconic, on why you seem confused, on why you seem to be being manipulated by everybody around you and have no argument against it.
Yeah, like why you think to yourself constantly throughout the game, why is Boss just kind of a passenger? Why does he feel like he's just doing what he's told when he's the boss?
Yeah.
And you find out why. It's because he's literally a puppet. A puppet they care about, a puppet that's important to them, but at the same time just you are a vessel through which they can protect the person they love and respect and want to follow.
And yet somehow it seems that despite a burden coming with that, you eventually transcend that. And I think that's fascinating.
Which is really cool. And like when we talk a little more about what Metal Gear is about in a little bit, we definitely want to plug into that. Because to me, the main thing about the twist, it's not just that Venom, it's not just that you're not playing as Venom, and not just that you're not playing as Big Boss, rather.
Yeah.
But it's that you're playing literally as yourself.
Yeah.
Like that was the whole purpose of that creator. The idea was that people would do what they mostly do, which is just make themselves, and that people would put in their own name and their own birthday.
Yeah.
So as soon as I saw that pop up, I automatically went, this is going to come back in the end like it did in Metal Gear Solid 2. Because they put your name on the dog tags when they're like, oh, what's the name on the dog tags, Raiden? That's who you are. It's like, I don't need it. That's not who I am.
Yeah.
I didn't make that connection at all.
To see your name pop up, not only on the picture signed by Big Boss, and to have it
That
pop
was
up
the moment.
in the actual like passport that they give to the real Big Boss when he drives off on his motorcycle.
Yeah.
And to see all of that was pretty exciting for me. Like the whole you're not playing as Big Boss thing was definitely a big thing for me, but I kind of knew it like from the first trailer with that garbage song where it's basically all the lyrics are about everything not being what it is. Also, I overanalyzed all those trailers. But I'd say the major thing for me was at the very end when he's in it's like a bathroom or something like that, and he's looking at himself in the mirror, and he has the tape that we all saw before, and it's, oh yeah, that's the David Bowie song, Man Who Sold the World, yeah, cool. And it shows from The Man Who Sold the World, and he flips it over, and he puts it in the tape thing, and you see when he puts it down, Operation Intrude.
Intrude and
Yeah.
313, and
Yeah.
that's of course, if you know, for people who don't know, that is the name of the operation by which Snake is misled to go and investigate Outer Heaven in Metal Gear.
You talk about that ending moment and its parallel at the very beginning of the game. When that game opened in Outer Heaven with just another day in a war that never ends.
Yeah.
Again, I'm an old man. Metal Gear began for me on the NES with that awful port that we got. And despite its many flaws, it sucked me in. The idea of a game where I could sneak around, the idea of a game where I could use all this fascinating hardware in different ways and solve problems and puzzles. But Outer Heaven, that was the place I was infiltrating. That's where I was going. It was Big Boss I was after. To find myself back there at last.
It was very powerful.
And then to end there, it felt that the game and the series ended where the series began.
Yeah, that's
and
it.
that was a nice circle.
Because Metal Gear Solid 5, it's very much a bridge between Big Boss and Solid Snake.
Oh, absolutely.
And like when you see that, there was like this really good feeling of just like wholeness, I guess, and being complete that it came over me, and I was like, did it? It's sealed. That's the
absolutely.
series. We got it.
That's beautiful. It was it was very poetic the way they did that. So another the next big thing, just the next topic in general for big moments. I mean, let's talk about Quiet for a second.
Yeah,
We're gonna have
So let's. I addressed this in the review. We've all talked about this. Like, her outfit's dumb. It's ridiculous. It's
super dumb.
It's super dumb and super gross and
Unless it's one
unfortunate.
of the unlockable ones.
You know.
let's like some of those.
But,
Sure.
but a Quiet's default outfit exists to sell dolls
To
in
sell
Japan.
exactly right, and we know that, and it sucks. But that said, as much as that's unfortunate, and I would not ever want to make any excuse for it at all. I'm glad that the character Quiet is amazing. And
Her story is so awesome.
Probably my favorite new character to come along in video games in,
She
in a
doesn't
while.
start amazing. At first I was like, oh, it's the silent woman who's neat and kind of into you and follows you around and helps you out, and boy, she's tough. And I really wasn't grabbed by it when she does the knife thing in the guy's teeth. I'm just like, I'm not really getting... And then the more time I spent with her, and the more, particularly in the post-game, that story started to unfold, I was like, oh, they really did put some thought into this. I do find myself wishing that they had ascribed a visual and charismatic dignity to the character consistently throughout.
Yeah, I agree.
The way that, because Quiet becomes much more likable deeper in the story, and I wish that she'd have had that treatment earlier on as well. That said, she's a neat character.
It's that scene with Code Talker when she's like, I'll never.
Yeah,
I'll
when
never
she
speak, you know.
when she speaks and she's
Yeah.
when she speaks in Navajo, right?
Yeah.
And says that she'll never speak English because, of course, with the weird disease that kind of runs through this this game, the vocal cord parasites, which react to a
Not
specific
sure on that one.
which react to a specific language, and that causes them to activate and multiply and spread.
That weird thing there, that's very Kojima.
Yeah.
There's Jeremy Parrish from US Gamer, big Metal Gear fan, and he likes to point out the similarities between G.I. Joe and Metal Gear a lot. That is such a G.I. Joe plot line. Like
Sure.
The disease that goes through the language. It's practically the Weather Dominator satellite, but it's perfect. It fits the theme great, and it works well. And they find a way. It's a dumb thing, I think. It's a silly idea, but I say that, and then they find a way to bring me to the edge of tears with what they do with it.
It's just an amazing moment. Like not only her awesome like cutscene with her just like fighting off her attackers and just absolutely making them pay in the most gruesome, satisfying, amazing way possible, which was just terrific and savage and wonderful. But like, it's her capability to both be this ferocious, intimidating, terrifying warrior, but also seem also kind of morose and sad and like she's carrying a heavy weight, but she has to kind of express that without ever. And she has to express that without saying anything. As a character, I'm saying, like in terms of character design, she has to express that without words and with the handicap of a ridiculous outfit.
And she manages it.
And she manages it.
And then, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say because you guys have heard me say it already a whole bunch of times. Like I wish that the reasons for her character being the way I wish that the way she was dressed was as good as her reasons for not talking.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it's a shame that you have like these two really like main character traits for her, and one of them is kind of just a little gross, and then the other one's like, yo, you can't talk and tell anyone anything because you're gonna kill.
Yeah,
And then you take that language disease and you find, and then in that last hour to, it's a moment of heroic self-sacrifice, and they take that
it's a
what should
beautiful
be a
moment.
silly gimmick and turn it into a beautiful moment.
Yeah, because
And
she's sitting there for like 2 straight minutes or so trying to explain in Navajo.
Yeah.
And Pequod is just not understanding it. And you're like, and with every time she repeats herself and he doesn't get it, you're like, no, don't make her. Don't make her. And then like she has the moment where she realizes I'm going to die.
I'm just sitting there going, why
I don't
didn't
have
you
a
study
choice. And I'm
French
just
in
like-
high school?
And then you lose her forever. She walks off, and like that's like honestly like it's brilliant that they committed to that in that way. Where like now like in all this post game, I'm farming, I'm wandering, I'm still unlocking stuff and researching stuff, but I can't bring my best best
not
bud
there.
anymore. I
She's
can't.
gone.
I still this is so silly and dumb, and I can't even explain it. But like just her humming and that song, that theme, the quiet theme, just immediately emotionally grabbed me from the first time I heard it.
It's so
and now
beautiful.
It's so beautiful.
It's so beautiful.
And now it's like I go and I on missions, and sometimes when I'm just scoping out a base, like I'm doing that part where I'm just like far away up on a ridge with my sniper rifle, I just kind of turn on the tape and I get a little bit choked up.
Now, I'm going to detract from all the beauty you just shared, because the first time I heard that, for some reason, it triggered the part in my brain that remembered that from Kill Bill. And that's
interesting.
what I would hear. I would just hear the theme song.
Well, that
the
works just
whistle
as
song.
that works just as well for
Playing at
her.
the
I mean,
same
that
time,
works. That works just as
I
well.
know the numbers that Sonny sings in Metal Gear Solid 4.
So
It's good.
As far as big other big moments go, I think the other really big one is Bright Lights Even in Death. I believe is the name of the mission, where the vocal cord parasite, it mutates, it resurges, and it infects a bunch of people on the quarantine platform, and Venom Snake is forced to go in, find out what happened, and then he has no choice but to just kill all his men.
It was probably a second point in the story where, because I'm very involved in this. I care about these characters so much. They've been here pretty much my whole time I've been alive, and seeing who I thought was Big Boss go through that again. Like, he's already lost all the people that he brought in his mother base when Skullface blew it all up in Ground Zeroes.
Yep.
And now he's got to march through these bloody halls, and he has to shoot everyone he cares about.
Not to mention you lose. That's the other thing about this, is that you lose a good, depending on how you handle it, you lose a good like 1/3 to half of your staff to the Kikongo strain of this same virus, which is a totally other kind of moment that's interesting in its own way. In that like it's not a moment that happens in a cinematic. It's more of a moment that's happening in menus, and you're trying to figure it out, and it's kind of interesting. But I mean, like, after spending so many hours building my dudes up and then like losing half of them to that strain, it made having to face this disease again
Frightening.
even more frightening and
you've
harder.
got the real stakes here. I was fortunate, by the way, with the Kikongo strain. I just didn't bother to research it much and blaze through every mission to the cure. You lose far fewer guys that way, as near as I can tell. So they're
Really?
fun tip. At least that's what happened for you. If you just keep auto quarantining and blaze through those missions, ignoring side offices.
There was an auto quarantine?
Well, you could auto sort your guys and it would still quarantine everybody who you already knew was infected. You didn't.
Oh,
it
okay.
did, yeah, it did, you
So
kept
I
spreading.
spent 45 minutes going through picking out everyone.
In that 45 minutes, I beat 2 of the missions that got me closer to the cure.
I was so proud of myself for solving the riddle and the thing that I just had to. You go over here. You're out. And
No,
But now I'm taking away from the emotional impact of what you're pointing out. Which
it's okay.
You have a mechanical loss, but yeah, I mean, it's a storytelling game, and you're not a particularly murderous personality in this game. You're not savage. You have the option sometimes to kill, but you don't always take it immediately.
And that's the thing about this, and we'll maybe it's a good time. I think we've covered kind of the big moments, at least laid them out. I want to use that as a way to transition into, let's talk about what this Metal Gear, what the Phantom Pain is actually about. You can say that every Metal Gear, that Kojima has had his hands on, has a set of themes, has something to say, even if you think it says it in a ridiculous or silly fashion, even if you don't always think it's saying something worthwhile. Like the man has things to say, and I'm curious to hear what you guys think the themes are, because I know what the themes seem to be, what are presented to you overtly, but then I've come to feel like it's about something else altogether.
Okay, I'll project on that one for a second, or we want to start with Chris and go down the line. Maybe, I don't know. What do you think?
Let's start with you.
Okay, sure. So maybe I'm projecting my own life onto this.
No, that's what it's all about, though.
But
Yeah,
I
that's
think
what you
this,
do, yeah.
I think this is, say, again, there's clear Metal Gear themes. You could about 2 with misinformation or 3 with the proliferation. I feel like this is a Metal Gear about getting old, and about how the older you get, the more powerless you become or feel.
Interesting.
This is a game about maturing and discovering that there's a thing from, I think, scripture of all things, where somebody says, when you're young, you will do what you want, but when you grow old, someone will take you by the hand and lead you where you do not want to go. I kept hearing that when I played this game. You're a character who has been through so much and become so wounded physically and emotionally, so burdened with responsibility and the failures in that responsibility, that you've begun to lose the sense of identity that was so clear when you were younger. And you find yourself easily manipulated, true, but a lot of that is a loss of self and an attempt desperately to continue to find a new self following the best patterns that you know how, even if those patterns are just to go through the motions of what's familiar and hope that something eventually clicks. I feel like a lot of what Venom Snake does in this game is that.
Yeah, and it's not only Venom Snake who experiences it too, because when you think about it, Venom Snake doesn't have an identity.
Yeah.
You know, he doesn't really have an actual identity. He's literally living someone else's.
Yeah.
And he actually believes that he is Big Boss. But then there's other characters that are in similar situations too, in a way. Like Volgin, in a lot of ways, is literally being used as a, Psycho Mantis isn't really using him, but it's really Skullface who's using his anger as, like, Volgin is, for all intents and purposes, he's finished. Like, he's just a corpse. Like you said, he has literally no semblance of himself as a person left, or what he was in his youth. But he is literally and figuratively led down this path of revenge for someone else's gain. And then Psycho Mantis as well, if you understand the vagaries of kind of how his power works, his self, they say this, his ego actually recedes and goes away when he is in the presence of someone else with this strong will, who then, like, their will becomes him. Like, their will imprints upon him, and through him manifests power. So in a way, like, he also is just a tool.
And then Kaz, who at this point is so maimed and so bitter, and he's literally, there's not a lot left of him. And even Ocelot, who is pretty lighthearted at the beginning, but he can see the creep finally beginning to happen from where he becomes that likable character you've known in the earlier parts of the narrative to become the jerk you run into.
The torturer.
Eventually. Yeah.
And the manipulator.
And I think it's a lot of it's about getting old. And then the young characters are all presented as either incomprehensible, literally, in the case of Quiet, or almost punkish and alienated, like Eli.
Sure.
Yeah, so that's my thought. That's what I think. It's about getting old.
What about just the idea of what a legend is?
I like that.
Yeah.
Because I mean, with Venom Snake not being Big Boss, or we can talk about that in a minute or two. But Venom Snake becomes the legend, and how the legend is always bigger than the man. You know what I mean? I think he has a lot to say with that as well, because this is not Big Boss. This is somebody else doing all these actions, and Big Boss is getting the credit for it. So.
Yeah, and I love that, because through the legend, he becomes, what is Big Boss to us as players? Big Boss is a legend. We've traveled through his story, and we've encountered him at many different times in his life. Sometimes we've controlled him. Sometimes we fought against him. But always the legend remains. In this case, playing the part of the person who isn't who we expected, becoming the legend. I'd argue again that makes him every bit Big Boss. I think this is Big Boss.
Even Big Boss says that, though.
Yeah,
like in
right.
the tape at the end, from the man who sold the world, Big Boss says to him, says to Venom Snake, like, I am not Big Boss. We are Big Boss.
Yeah.
Together we make Big Boss.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of truth to that. And also, to your point about legends, I think one of the themes is, and kind of for me the main overriding theme, the big call. I don't know if it's Kaufman-esque, but the big joke on players, the big, like, hold the mirror up moment, which is what I think this game is actually really all about.
Yeah.
Is that moment when in Bright Lights, Even in Death, you've worked your way to the top, you realize you now have to work your way back down, and you have to kill everyone they're begging for mercy, they're bloody, they're crawling on the ground, they're scared. it's really rough. Huey is getting crazy over the radio. What are you doing? This is not the person I admire. This is not the person I thought you were. You know. And then there's that one room where you walk in. You hear like gunfire. You hear people arguing, and you walk in, and there's a struggle. And one guy is holding up a gun to someone who's being held back by someone else. They're clearly having an argument over whether or not they should kill each other or kill themselves. And then as soon as you walk into the room, just like they do when you hit the deck on the mother base, they all stop what they're doing, and they turn right to you, and they stand at attention, and they say, "Boss, it's up to you. We live and die at your whim."
Right.
And the Peace Walker theme is playing in the background
they're humming
on the radio.
along with it, too.
They're humming along with it, and it is this moment of, not only is it like a punch in the gut, but it's for me it was a revelatory moment when I really thought about it. It's where the game shows its hand, and what it says is, Diamond Dogs is a war cult, and you are a cult leader. You are, through the power of legend, by kidnapping them, through Ocelot's torture, by the cult of military, you are their god. You are their god, and you're a wrangler of men's souls. You are a monster.
Yeah.
And you realize at that moment that you've been using them as a commodity, you the gamer, have been using them as a commodity the entire time. You literally just you do worse than kill them. You're not just the psychopathic murderer you are in every other game. You literally take them away and brainwash them and make them your literally your dogs to go and do your bidding.
It's like a dark mirror of Raiden in Metal Gear Solid 2, where he kind of serves as an analog for the player, as somebody's like, with somebody that represents the person who's already done Metal Gear, but is now going back and doing it again from their couch. It's really kind of good. It's that same avatar, but instead of it being entering into an enterprising and arguably heroic adventure, it's you doing that and exploring the really nasty side of that possibility.
And the amazing part of it too is that at that point, when Bright Lights Even in Death happens, at that point you're still living in this world where you're like, oh, I'm experiencing the story of this character that I know about, and you think at that moment you're watching the beginning of his turn from a virtuous. A lot of people will come at it from that perspective, where this is the beginning of his turn from a virtuous hero to the villain that we know, except that a lot of people I think won't realize is that already at that moment you're already a monster.
Yeah.
You're literally already a cultist. You're already a military cultist. And then the big punchline is that he's not Big Boss. He's literally you.
Yeah.
If you put your name in and you put your birthday and you did what most people do when you have the character creator, you make yourself, there's this moment at the end of the game where they go, that monster who did all those things, this cult leader, this psychopath, is literally actually you. And that is what to me, the Phantom Pain winds up being all about. That's why there's so few cutscenes. That's why he barely talks throughout most of the game. That's why most of the storytelling or the scripted, there's very few scripted moments. All of the movie moments are the ones that you make with the freedom and tools in the open world. So that 100 hours later, 80 hours later, 90 hours later, you actually have felt like you've walked the steps and written the legend of this character. And then the cherry on top is that he's actually you, and you're a terrible person. and that's a lot of great games have played with that idea of what is free will and what does it mean to play, and what are we really doing when we take the controller in our hands, and that's my biggest takeaway from it. But this has been a blast. We could certainly sit here for many, many more minutes going through the rest of the themes and all the different crazy moments from Metal Gear Solid 5. Incredible game. Thank you so much, though, folks, for joining us, and thank you, folks at home, for watching. And for more on Metal Gear Solid 5, keep it right here on IGN.